Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Perception Evolution Project by WCE. This is our Blue is the New White series, where we talk all about the blue-collar industry and what it means for the next generation. Today, we're here with the infamous Mike Mayberry, HVAC reefer guy. If you haven't already checked out the last podcast we did together, I highly advise that you do check it out. It was a great conversation. I think it was, a few months ago. I remember more than that.
Like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah, 4 or 5 months ago already. So go ahead and check that out. Otherwise, we're going to be talking today a little bit about the things that he puts out on social media and his message overall. So, Mike, for those who don't know you, which is probably very few, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Mike, obviously, and my social media is under HVAC Reefer Guy. That's HVAC _REFER _ guy. And you can find me on 9 platforms of social media, including TikTok, Trade Hounds, 2 Facebook pages, what else? Instagram, obviously, YouTube, Vera. There's also iTunes. You can hear my podcasts on iTunes and Spotify. We are also on LinkedIn and YouTube. There's 150 videos on YouTube. And then if you need to get a hold of me for any reason, you can get a hold of me on Gmail through hvacreeferguy@gmail.com. I answer every single email and request and comment.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Mike. So expanding on just exactly what you talked about, the social media, I think probably your biggest message or what people know you best for, right, is make blue collar great again. Would that be...
Well, the original concept was to keep the HVACR past alive.
Let's start with that one.
Well, that was actually the original, and quite honestly, I think when we spoke about the social media last time, it was a joke that my daughter made about old people, and I was kind of looking at Instagram, and she said, "What is that?" I said, "What is that?" And she says, "Listen, old man, go do your Facebook," which really pissed me off, and so I went on Instagram and failed at it. The first one was horrible. And so we redid the Instagram, and my son was like, "Well, you should do an air conditioning page." And this was 5 years ago, and nobody was really doing social media on Instagram then. And we did this HVAC. I went HVAC reefer, and it wouldn't let me. I didn't understand underscores, and then we finally figured that out, and nobody had the name, and we took it, and it went from there. It then turned, because I was doing lots of classical HVAC stuff.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. The classical HVAC stuff, what was the reasoning behind doing that?
Well, as the trade evolves and goes into the next generation of computers and microprocessors, people were forgetting what the trade was about, which was moving refrigerants in a circle. It was forgetting about how the trade got there, right? So you have guys that are out saying, well, in order to pull a perfect vacuum on a refrigeration, you got to pull the Schrader cores. Well, I'm like, well, for 50 years before that, millions of techs were doing it this way. You can't sit there and say, well, all these techs were doing it wrong, because now this is the new way. Mm-hmm. Well, you got to remember that in order for us to move forward, we have to remember the past. And everything that we do, every industry, whatever it is, you have to remember the past. And so people were looking at the HVAC industry and saying, excuse me, compressors are moving forward. Okay, great. We have mechanical unloaders. Well, we're doing everything with VFDs now. Well, that's true, but the VFD algorithm is based upon an unloader doing what it needs to do. Or refrigerants are moving forward into the new refrigerants. Well, in order for these refrigerants to do the job, we have to remember what we did with R12 and 502. So that was part of it, which was to keep that past alive and to remember the old guys that paved the way to where we are today. It eventually turned to where people were saying, okay, well, blue collar isn't really accepted. And so 5 years ago, we started moving into the direction of keeping the past alive, but also starting to remember that blue collar is an industry. We have to remember who we are, because moving forward, my generation, which is 55-year-olds, the baby boomers, we're retiring out or dying off, and there's nobody to replace us. So young guys like you who grew up with a dad in the trade, you guys are coming up into the industry. You're the new future. And so I'm glad when I read your book and see your book about the blue collar is the new white, because now all of a sudden we can embrace the trades, and young people are like, I can make a living doing this. This is not that bad. I can have a great life, or college students. I've got a bachelor's degree in art, and I don't have anywhere to apply it. Well, you don't need to go into huge amounts of debt in order to make a really great living. And so my social media began to turn. It still remembers the past, but then we refocused, and somewhere along the line, the slogan of "Make Blue Collar Great Again," which a lot of people were like, "Oh, you're on President Trump's thing, where you're Make America Great Again." We've been saying "Make Blue Collar Great Again" long before he was in the presidency, and so making blue collar great, or making blue collar great again, is now my focus, which where we redid some logos, we redid some branding, we got a graphic artist to put the boots together and the hard hats, that stickers out there. And that's where we're really trying to focus now is, and it's going to a poster. We have a poster that'll be developed. It's already done, where we're going to send this poster out for free to trade schools and high schools to make blue collar great again, and start letting people know that, there's an industry out there that needs you. It needs you, young man, young woman, and you can make an awesome living doing what might be dirty. That's where I love that slogan about dirty hands equals clean money, right? Mm-hmm. And let's focus down that direction.
Awesome. No, that's a great story, and I love what you said about basically to know where you're going, you have to know where you've been. Mm-hmm. Walter Payton is one of my greatest idols, and in his book, Never Die Easy,
Does he say that?
He says something similar to that. He says, if you've forgotten your roots, you've lost sight of everything. And that's always kind of stuck with me, and I think it holds true in not only personally, but professionally as well. Like in this trade, like you just said, is, you need to remember your roots. You need to know why you're doing something in order to excel in doing it. At least that's my belief. And because I've noticed in your social media that you still go back to that. You do a lot of the make blue collar great again, but then every once in a while you'll still throw in a post of like an old HVAC unit, and I just think that that's awesome, because even though you're progressing with this message that it pivoted to, you're still finding a way to tie in, the roots, the actual grassroots of the industry, and why it's important and where it started. Not a lot of people, if anybody, I think is doing that.
Which is a shame.
It is a shame.
Because my generation, the one thing that I talk about, like I'll do an Instagram live. I'll get maybe 500 to 1,000 viewers in 24 hours. That's a pretty good ratio, pretty good number.
Yeah.
I try to tell service managers that are my age, take down your wall. Because you've got all this knowledge in your head, and you're sitting in a pretty office like we're sitting here, and you need to get out of your office and go in your truck and go out on a rooftop and stand next to your techs and get this knowledge that's in your head out to them. Like yesterday I went to North Phoenix, went to a Big Lots location, was talking to a tech that had been in the trade like 10 years. He's a journeyman, right? And he's looking at some filter dryers and a refrigerator, and he's like, I've never worked with that. I'm like, how can you not have worked with it? Then it dawned on me, he hasn't had the exposure to it. So we sat for an hour, and I said, this is how you're going to change this part, and this is what you need to do, and these are the steps, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is what you're going to do, and this is how it functions. And he's like, wow. He even said it yesterday. He's like, OG came out and spent an hour with me talking about the trade. That is huge.
Yeah.
My generation of techs needs techs, service managers, and owners. We need to open ourselves up and expose ourselves, not physically, but expose ourselves to the next generation of techs because they're coming forward. I've got a series coming up and I'm going to be doing an interview with multiple people about millennials and Gen Zs, because millennials and Gen Zs are the future of the trade. Right now, the millennials, which you're a millennial, you're in your mid-20s, early 30s, right?
Early 30s.
Okay, early 30s. The millennials are coming up into the industry as prominent owners and business owners. The baby boomers are retiring out. You, sir, are going to be faced with Gen Zs, which is 2020 to 2000s. Here, we're going to go into 2020 is right around the corner. We're going to have men and women born in 2000, 2001, 2002 that are going to be coming into the workforce, and you are going to be struggling to figure out how to get them into an industry like we struggled with how to get the millennials into the industry. So now we need to collectively as a group expose ourselves mentally to take what's in here in our brains and get them out to multiple generations to move them into the industry so that they understand that there's a huge opportunity to live extremely well, which means the marketing has to change. I, as a service manager, like for me, I'm using social media to go out to the Gen Zs and meet with them at their level and saying, hey, this is the opportunities, right? It used to be 40 hours a week. For me, how much am I going to make per hour, and do I get 40 hours a week? As the millennials came into it, it was, how's my lifestyle going to be impacted? How much free time am I going to have? I still want to make 40 hours a week, but if I do 30, I'm okay because I'm going kayaking this weekend.
Yep.
The Gen Zs are coming onto the market now. It's a combination of the millennials. It's a combination of the baby boomers because they have grandparents, right? But to them now, it's going to be not only the free time, but I'm going to research your industry on Google. And I'm going to use social media to find out the impact that I'm having on my life and on the world. So new refrigerants coming onto the market are going to be huge to a Gen Z because you're going to be able to say, you know what, that is a CO2-based natural refrigerant, and the impact on the world that's going to stop global warming while still providing comfort and fresh food and a way of life. So we and you, millennials and baby boomers, we need to completely change the way we view life, the way we view blue collar, the way we view up and coming employees, that no longer is it just going to be that blue collar is the new white, but what impact are we going to have on the world, and how are we going to do that with the Gen Zs? And so you're looking at me like, where did this come from? Because that's what goes through my head all the time is I see a young man and woman coming out of high school, and I see them graduating in 2019, right? They're the future of our trade. You're the future of ownership and management. Gen Zs are the future of the labor force. Someday the Gen Zs will be, you're going to be in 20 years, you're going to be sitting here talking into a Google Glass. Maybe they'll make a comeback, right?
Yeah, right.
Social media will evolve. Apps are going to go away. That's the future. Everything will be cloud-based. You'll go up to your Alexa, something, because I do agree with Gary Vaynerchuk, Gary V, that everything will be cloud-based and everything will be speak. And you will go up to a unit someday, an air conditioning unit, and go, air conditioning unit, tell me what alarm codes you have, tell me what functionality you have, tell me what's going on within the system. And the unit's going to talk back to you, right?
Yeah.
We as a group have to be prepared for that. We have to think outside that mindset. Blue collar will still be there, but it's going to be so technology based that it's going to be like mind numbing. It's going to be your head's going to
Yeah.
be explode.
It's
right?
amazing to me what kind of a perspective you seem to have on the next generations. You seem to understand exactly what it is that they want. Is that just from research? Is that from experience, having kids?
No.
What, you know.
My kids are in the mid-20s, late 20s.
Okay.
What it is listening and seeing social media evolve. It's no longer, social media isn't just about posting a picture, putting some hashtags, and waiting for comments. Social media now is uploading a photo, getting the likes, getting the hashtags, but analyzing the comments and looking to see what's going on, right? Social media will evolve to a point to where it'll become socially acceptable. As the older generation, the 70s and 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds pass away and we come through, you'll have multiple generations that's been exposed to social media, and they'll be collectively working together to improve our environment. Like, we're 50-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 20-year-olds, we're all looking at social media and seeing plastic floating around in the ocean. So collectively, we want to get rid of plastics and we want to save the world, right? We collectively understand that chemicals going into the atmosphere are creating a greenhouse effect. And how do we do that? Well, we've got to get rid of refrigerants and we've got to go to something different. So collectively, we're doing that. My generation needs to drop and expose themselves and drop these walls and take the knowledge that we have in our head and train the younger people. Excuse me. I did this live Instagram, all the way back to the live Instagram. I did this live Instagram, and this guy says, God, I wish I worked for a guy like you. This comment popped up. I wish I worked for someone like you, and I wish my boss was like you. That's a compliment. Mm-hmm. But that's also me looking at a 19-year-old, because I asked him, I says, well, how old are you? He goes, I'm 19. So he's 19, 20 years old. He's that Gen Z that's born in 2000, right on that cusp, right? Mm-hmm. Telling me, I wish my boss was like you, and I wish I worked for somebody like you. And I went, holy crap. Like, who does he work for?
Right.
Well, he works for a 55-year-old man or woman, or a 45-year-old man or woman, whoever it is, that's service managing his company, and he's coming to them and saying, I need help, and they're saying, go out and get it on OJT, on the job training, and instead we should be reaching back to them and saying, hey man, come, what's 5 minutes? Hey, come in, what do you got a problem with? Well, I don't understand electronic expansion valves, or I don't understand this controller. It literally takes 5 minutes to sit down, stop what you're doing, which 5 minutes, and say, let's talk about the EEV and how it steps and how it does this, right? There's a bonding that goes on across the desk, across the person. There's a bonding that goes on. You've taken the knowledge, you've exposed it to him, and he looks at you and says, or she looks at you and says, wow, this guy, he's on my side. He's helping me.
Yeah.
When we don't do that, all growth stops. When the social media was created about keeping the past alive, that's how they used to do stuff. It was different then. Like, I was bullied in my first year of being in the trade and called horrible names. Uh-huh. Bullwinkle and cussed at, and, because I'm a big guy. Oh, here comes Bullwinkle. You know what Bullwinkle is? It's a big, tall thing that doesn't know anything but thinks he's Mr. Know-It-All. And I was bullied, and it was, horrible. Like, you couldn't get away with it now. Uh-huh. Because that's how it was then.
Right.
I don't want that to happen. I don't want anybody to ever come to me and feel bullied.
Yeah.
So for me to keep the past alive, I have to remember where I came from and how I was treated as an employee, and tell myself I am never going to treat my employee like that, ever. He'll ask a silly question, and I'll be like, really? That's really a question? But then you think about it, and you're like, and he looks at you or she looks at you, and you're like, okay. Let's come up with an answer.
Wow, that's a great way to look at it. Do you think that the barriers that exist between the generations make it difficult for people to have that viewpoint? So, you know, there's a barrier between the baby boomers and the millennials, and I'm sure there's probably one brewing, if not one that already exists between the millennials and the Gen Zs. And let's not even talk about the barrier between baby boomers and Gen Zs, you know, because there's a lot of perspectives and assumptions and things like that go on with the different generations. And I don't think it's a specific generation's fault. I think that no matter what the generation is, there's always going to be a difference of viewpoint and opinion. So what kind of effect do you think that has on it?
You know, when in the 80s, you know, not the 1880s, when in the 1980s, when I was a young guy graduating high school, right, I heard from my parents, oh, your generation sucks. You guys are so lazy. You guys don't want to make a job. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. Well, I think every generation says that, right? They always look back in the 70s, the parents in the 1950s, you know, the 70s, those parents were like, oh my God, your kid, you know, smoking pot and doing all this stuff. He's so lazy and, you know, whatever. And the 60s was dealing with the 40s. There's that 25-year age gap. So I think every single generation all the way through has always looks backwards. Oh, you know, back in my day, you know, I walked to school both way in the snow uphill. Really? You lived in Phoenix. Where does it snow? You know, and you hear people say back in my day. I do that now because I hear people talk about the industry and the way it did things back in the 1880s, back in the 1980s. And they'll say things like, oh, I can't believe that thing, you know, ran without a VFD. That thing is totally inefficient. Well, you're right. That 10 SEER or 8 SEER unit was totally inefficient, but it's still working today. In fact, that unit is still working on the rooftop and it's 100% paid for. So in my eyes, it's 100% efficient. We spend that time doing that. So my wife and I'm 55. My wife is 57. We went to see this movie, an adult movie, with John Lithgow. You know, it was baby boomer movie. The whole theater was baby boomers over in Goodyear, Arizona. And I dealt with baby boomers on their phone during the movie. So my generation talks crap about the millennials and how rude they are, and yet I'm watching my generation sit in a theater while the movie's playing on their smartphones. So, you know, how can I, as a baby boomer, hold a millennial or a younger person accountable when my own age, I can't even hold my own age group accountable? So, rudeness in its way isn't a generational thing. It's just everybody does stuff that to them is okay and to someone else isn't. Yeah. So I don't think that's a generational issue.
I think that's a good answer.
I think the generational issue comes in not accepting what's coming your way and putting up a barrier and saying, like for me, I know my smartphone and my iPad tracks my every move, right? It just does. I don't have any talking devices in my house. Like I don't have an Alexa because I don't want Alexa to hear everything.
Yeah.
I'm skeptical of it. Yet I'm not skeptical of the smartphone that anybody can turn the microphone on and anybody can hack my camera and see what's going on. But that's okay because I'm used to it because it's a phone. In my head, it's still a phone. So I don't have any talking devices. Is that dumb? In a way, because in my head, it's so new, right?
Well, it's a perception thing.
It's a perception thing.
Yep.
It's so new. I look over at it and I look at that darn thing and I'm like, it's listening to me. You know, well, so is my phone. But that's okay because it's a phone. I don't want Alexa hearing my words, you know, or a thermostat hearing what's going on.
Yep.
And then at the same time, my boss, who's 10 years younger than I am, has an Alexa in his office and he goes, Alexa, put on Brooks and Dunn, and boom, it popped right out. And I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. It just did it that fast. And he's like, you going to get one? And I'm like, I might now, you know, because it just popped right up.
Yeah.
I think as the generations go, we need to respect each other. We need to take the strengths and weaknesses of each generation. We need to work with each generation. And as employers and as business owners, we have to accept each generation for their weaknesses, because if we don't, we will never get people to work for us, which is, I think, part of the problem with blue collar. This makes a vicious cycle. If
Yeah.
I'm rambling, let me know.
No.
Which makes a vicious cycle. We didn't respect the individual generations as they were coming on. And the older generation talked crap about the millennials, which put up a wall. And we missed out on getting them into the blue collar industry, which is why there's this massive skills gap. We didn't accept it. We said things like, oh, trade schools are opening up soon. Soon there'll be so many techs in the industry that I'll be able to drive wages down and I'll be able to make more money. Well, that didn't happen. Business owners weren't able to drive wages down. The skills gap became greater, and people at my age at 55 became more valuable. Okay. Instead of being afraid to be pushed out of jobs, we're not afraid to be pushed out of jobs anymore, and there is no age discrimination because we've become more valuable than ever.
Yep.
Now the industry says and it's all of them. Welders, electricians, painters,
skilled trades in general.
Anybody, groundsmen, groundskeepers, anybody that works with their hands are saying, holy crap, we got a problem. We need to embrace some millennials. And now, which is why I was telling you back to the Gen Zs, we need to embrace the Gen Zs.
Yeah.
And we can't make the same mistakes that we'd made with millennials with Gen Zs, because Gen Zs in some way are technologically smarter.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because they have the hand tools around them, which are smart devices, to figure things out. Oh, you're not going to help me with my air conditioning unit? I'll go on YouTube and work on it and watch it myself and then be like, oh, here, I replaced the capacitor. I'm done. And you're going to be like, how'd you learn that? YouTube. Where our generation was, how'd you learn that? Oh, I had to wait for Dad to show me. Or I learned it in trade school. If we don't, we're going to have a greater skills gap.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So when you said earlier, how did I learn all this? It dawned on me like months ago. Oh my God, 2020 is around the corner. I'm going to have Gen Zers showing at my door going, hello, Mr. HVAC reefer guy, I'm looking for a job.
Yep. So let me ask you this then, knowing what you know and knowing what appeals to the Gen Zers, you know, what do you foresee as I want to say a solution, but, you know, to close that gap? What are they looking for? Is it the same thing that everyone's always been looking for in a job, or do they have a perspective? You had mentioned Gen Zers are focused a lot on like the environment and the world and making a difference. Is it something that
I don't
companies
know all the way. There's a program here in Phoenix that takes high school students, junior and senior high school students, takes them out to the Air Reserve Base over off of Papago, McDowell, and they get to use, while they're in high school, tractors and trailers and bend conduit and braze, and it exposes them to what their future could be and the opportunities that exist. When I was in school, shop and wood shop and metal shop and auto shop was part of the curriculum. So we were exposed to it when we were younger. So when we graduated, we kind of already knew what we wanted. Mm-hmm. As shop went away, the millennials came onto the market. Now the Gen Zers are coming on the market. They get out of school and they're not sure what they want to do. Mm-hmm. So they're driven into college because you're not sure what you're going to do. Well, listen, we've got a community college program, and they don't know because there was no technical stuff, no hands-on shops. Gen Zers we're realizing that we made huge mistakes, and Gen Zers now can research their career when they're in junior high. Mm-hmm. And the blue-collar industry needs to recognize that by saying, we can't wait for high school anymore. Let's go back while they're in junior high and high school and start to show them, hey, while you're in junior high at 13, 14 years old. You're going to be graduating in 4 years. There's some awesome things you can do.
Yeah.
Like, this is so much fun. Like, if you're a welder, you get to climb high buildings and you get to make cool things. And let's show you how to make a car, and let's show you how to make a UTV, you know what I mean? And let's show you how we can weld some piping, and you can be on a pipe crew. And, oh, you don't really like that? Oh, let's show you some conduit and let's pull some wire.
Yeah.
You know, well, I really like working around food. Well, do you want to be a chef? Well, no. Let's talk about some food. Let's talk about hot side, cold side, and ice machines. And you get to make ice and this and that, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of, by the time they graduate high school, as a Gen Zer, they're starting to see that there's opportunities out there for you that don't always necessarily mean you got to go to college,
Yeah.
but it's pre-driven. They're pre-exposed to it before they graduate, and that's what we need to do. There are fabulous companies out there. TD Industries, huge company. I've got a friend of mine that she's a recruiter. She's out doing stuff like that all the time with high school students and exposing them to things that are in career out there, and that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to not wait anymore until their senior year in high school and say, now what? We need to expose them to things and show them and that it's cool to come home dirty. It's cool to work with your hands. And then they take that information and they go to their mobile device and they type in blue collar, they type in plumbing, they type in salaries, wages, lifestyle, freedoms, and they see it and they go, wow, I can be a plumber and I can go to Alaska. I can do hot side, cold side food refrigeration and ovens and work in Canada, you know, or I can get my tool bag on and I can go to Australia and do an internship while being an electrician, you know. Oh my God, I get to travel? Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, their heads just, and that's where we need to be.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that, and I really like your perspective on just exposing it to them at a younger age, because that's not, you know, even though that's what used to happen, you know, long ago. Again, keeping the HVAC past alive, right? You know, these are the kind of things that kids were exposed to that they no longer are. You know, the removal of shop class, the big push for college. You know, the previous generation, call them millennials, are, you know, we're pushed towards a college education, so that's what they view as most valuable for their kids, and it created this cycle. You know, one of the things that I talk about in my book is because, you know...
Because I wanted to bring that up.
Well, the money is great. We know this. That has been at the forefront of everything. And I think it's because people think that is the best way to resonate with anybody looking for a career choice, right? Is how much can I make? You know, one of the things that I do in the book is I go past that into the lifestyle, into the benefits that may appeal to the Gen Zs, one being the ability to help people. And at the heart of it, everything, at the root of everything, what else is the skilled trades but helping people, helping industry, helping, you know, I mean, and that's one of the biggest things is, you know, as Mike Rowe would say, right, we are the ones that make civilized life possible. And I think that something like that may resonate because the Gen Z generation especially is all about change, all about, you know, what's good for the economy, what's good for the environment, and what's good is helping somebody else do something. And, you know, if we can adopt that mindset too, it kind of like you said with, you know, we need to help then the younger generation see this point of view. You know, it's a big circle. And I think that's important to let people know too, is that the opportunities that are talked about extend far beyond what you can get paid. You know, they extend far beyond where you can travel, you know, and what it can give you physically or monetarily, you know, to a lifestyle.
So in the last 2 days, we've had, it made me think about this. In the last 2 days, we've had 2 blue-collar workers pass away. We had one, and it happens all across the country, but I'm going to talk about two. We had a 53-year-old man pass away in Fresno. A refrigerator fell on his head. Horrible way to pass away. And then yesterday here in Phoenix, we had an air conditioning tech in Avondale that passed away in an attic because of heat. Horrible way to go. The blue-collar industry, this is going to be a big stretch.
Sure.
So some people may go, oh my God, this is crazy. I look at the blue-collar industry the same way people look at firemen, the same way they look at nurses, the way they look at the military, the way they look at any first responder. And I'll tell you why. When there is an ice storm on the East Coast and 100,000 people are without power, linemen come out of nowhere and they all funnel into that area. I consider them first responders. When cities have the levees break and fresh water can't be found anywhere, plumbers and electricians come out of nowhere and repair pumps and get plumbing restored to areas that need it, because if you don't, you could have death. I consider plumbers and electricians first responders. When it's 115 degrees in Arizona and we have senior centers with no air conditioning and we have homes with no air conditioning where seniors and the elderly and young infants live, and men and women get on rooftops and in hot attics to fix air conditioners, those are first responders. When you have a major catastrophic incident like earthquakes in California, and linemen, plumbers, electricians, carpenters come out of nowhere to rebuild. Yes, they're making a living, but they go to that. I consider them first responders. When you have areas that tornadoes come, glass is broken in building, and you've got glazers that move in and replace all the glass so you can work in a comfortable environment and you're protected from the elements, I consider glazers first responders. When you have buildings that topple or buildings or structural problems and welders come in to make buildings safe in the areas where we live safe, those welders are first responders. So we always talk about the first responders of military and listen, I am not taking away anything. They have firemen will walk into burning buildings. They'll walk into tower buildings like 9/11, and firemen do amazing things, and paramedics see things that I couldn't even imagine, and they help people with their lives, and the military comes in and makes us safe, and they send in the National Guard to areas to protect citizens, right? All of them are first responders. But for making an impact in life, I also look at every blue-collar industry that's out there, every blue-collar trade, I look at them as first responders too. So when you talk to a millennial or a Gen Z and he says, I want to make an impact in the world, bro, you're a plumber? I had a plumber tell me, I says, well, you know what's so great about a plumber, right? And he goes, we take the bad water out and bring the good water in. So if that right there, if I didn't have a plumber, we wouldn't have the safety sanitations that we have today that we take for granted, like a flushing toilet or a shower or fresh water out of our sink. If I didn't have an electrician, I wouldn't be able to sit in a house and watch TV or have air conditioning and have comfort in life. If I didn't have a glazer, I'd be sitting in an open room with God knows what, bugs and birds and everything coming in, so a glazer. If I didn't have a welder, he wouldn't be able to build the things that I take for granted every day, right?
Yeah.
If I didn't have an air conditioning refrigeration tech, I wouldn't have fresh food. I wouldn't have a comfortable home. I wouldn't be able to get into my car and drive around. Those people, an auto mechanic sits his butt in a hot shop fixing my car. I mean, we're all linked together. So when I talk about the blue collar side of things, about us being all linked together, should be the message that as millennials and Gen Zs coming up, is that everything that you do as a person, you're a first responder somewhere in life, and you make people's lives better. At the same time, you're making an income. So when young people come to me and go, why air conditioning? Because it's economy proof, right? People always need to eat. They always need to be air conditioned. They always need to be comfortable. Well, why a welder? People are going to want to live somewhere, and they're going to want to work in buildings, and they're going to want to have this. And without a lineman, there's no air conditioning refrigeration guy, because a lineman is bringing in power from a spot, right? And without you here at Windy City, you take care of the food, and you cook it, and you make it, and you oven it, and you store it. And without you, I wouldn't have fresh food, when I go to a supermarket, right? We are all tied together. Like, there is nobody that's better than anybody else. The wages will be better because depending on the job and the training that goes with it, but we're all tied together, right? And we're all in it together. That's why I tell people all the time at the end of my podcast, like, be good humans. We all walk on the same earth. We all breathe the same air, right? Be good to each other. Mm-hmm. But that's the direction we need to go. We need to let people know that we're all tied together. And so when a Gen Z or a millennial comes up and says, why should I go blue collar? Dude, you're making a huge impact. Or miss, you're doing things that most people can't do. And without that specific trade or that specific job, you'll be greatly missed, because there's huge opportunities to make the world a better place and to eat fresh food and to help a little old lady, live comfortably in her home on 115-degree day. Or without you as a lineman, we're not going to have power. And without you as a welder, and I mean, without you, landscaper, that's out mowing the yards in 115-degree heat and out there pushing a lawnmower. And I would drive up your street and see a horrible mess, right? Like, oh, I don't want to live here and I don't want to work here. But they're providing a visual comfort that says, wow, this is a beautiful area. Your office, Josh, is in a nice area because of those landscapers. And the pavers and the people out there building the roads and the streets, man, this is a nice road. This is comfortable. I like this. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is visually nice. That's how we're tied together. And I think that's the direction. That if we move together, showing that the blue collar industry is not separated, but we're together as one, and you are making an impact in people's lives, it's a win-win.
I can't tell you how much I love and agree with that perspective. Everything you just said, I mean, I think that is exactly how we reach the next generation and probably every succeeding generation. I couldn't have made a better association myself. I talk about that in my book. I think my exact quote is the trades manufacture the world as we see it today.
Yes.
And that's going to hold true forever.
Yes, absolutely. We're all linked somehow. Yeah. I mean, and so when I was telling you about the first responders, right? Because people don't value, like, we had the loss of life. We take each other for granted. We drive down the street, we see a beautiful green grass, we see a guy pushing the lawnmower, but we don't sit there and go, wow, that guy's out there busting his butt in 120-degree heat to make my yard look nice. And when you see an air conditioning guy up on the roof and he's fixing somebody's air conditioning, they're inside going, God, I hope it gets this in, because I can't live like this. This is bullcrap. Oh my God, it's 90 degrees and I can't live like this. He's up on a roof at 120 degrees. Yeah. You get to the restaurant, you want to order some food and go, I want my onion rings. Well, I'm sorry, sir, the deep fryer's down. We can't get well, I really wanted my onion rings. If I had my onion rings, well, and you're sitting in a hot kitchen fixing a fryer so we can have the onion rings. Got in a car accident, and I hope my car gets fixed because I really need my car, while the welder's in there re-welding the frame, and he's doing whatever. And $4 a gallon for gas? This is bullcrap. Well, sir, the pipelines are down, and, we had a plant explosion, and so the guys are re-welding everything, and they're getting the plant back online to get you $2.80 a gallon gas. I mean, like, we're literally all tied together. We take it all for granted, and we can't. We can't take it for granted. We can't take it the fact that we're all tied. You know what I mean? We're all tied together. There's people listening to the podcast and going, Mike's nuts because he thinks about this. But
no, I don't think so.
I think it's just, I think as time as I mature and I see younger people coming into the industry, that's the way that I always perceive. I always bring people, not perceive, but the way I bring people into the trade, going, you can make a difference in your life. You can live an awesome life. You can do the things in life that you wanted to do. You know, I think the old ways of going, well, without a college degree, I think college is awesome too, because we definitely need people. We definitely need salesmen, and we need accountants, and we need people moving paper around, and we need people having meetings and discussing, and we need physicists, and we need people working in microbiology labs and testing and creating, you know, new drugs for the stuff that's coming down the road that can hurt us. We need all that too. So that's why I say that we're all tied together, right? We're all tied together to move us down the highway of life. The first responders are there. To me, again, blue collar needs the respect that we deserve. We are first responders. We are people that make life better.
Yep.
When that happens and those walls come down, the millennials and the Gen Zs and the Gen Z and after the Gen Zs, you know, the people that are born in 2020 and all of a sudden it's 2040 and all, you know, that generation's coming up. Holy cow. You know, that's going to be the difference, is that we're all working together to make our world a better place.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a good stopping point.
You sure?
Yeah, I think so. We're already rambling here for about almost 50 minutes. So, but I imagine we're going to do this again at some point.
Absolutely.
So I just want to say thank you, Mike, for coming on. Why don't you do a little outro, tell people where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on 9 platforms of social media. So if you're a Facebooker and you don't really like Instagram, I hate that Instagram thing, you can find me on HVAC Reefer Guy. I have a closed group and an open group. The content runs just about the same. But you can go on and find me on Facebook, and I'm posting content, and you can engage there. You can find me on iTunes and Spotify. So if you type in, again, HVAC Reefer Guy, you'll find me on iTunes and Spotify. There's some podcasts in there, and I'm doing right now a 4-part series about the history of Tombstone. So I'm kind of changing a little bit. I'm getting off of blue collar because I really like Tombstone and Arizona history. So right now we're breaking down the events of the OK Corral and Doc and Wyatt. So if you want to hear that, that is on iTunes and Spotify under HVAC Reefer Guy. You can find me on YouTube at HVAC Reefer Guy MM, capital MM. There's 150 videos, so make sure you subscribe, hit the notification bell, because I'm putting out content and videos weekly. You can find me on Instagram at HVAC Reefer Guy. There's another, I think we're going to hit 30,000 followers by the end of the month. So there's tons of stuff going on there. We do IG Live. We do Sunday Fun Days, tons of giveaways. I have so many fantastic sponsors like Solderweld and Parker Sporlin and Klein and ASCO and TrueTech Tools and Supco. And WEH Quick Connects. Vito Pro Pack Tools is another huge sponsor. Roger at Vito Pro Pack is a big supporter. And DeWalt, I want to thank DeWalt because they will help out periodically. Oh, and Chuck Laparo at Midwest Tools, the right tool since 1945. I mean, I've got fabulous, and Refrigeration Technologies, Mike and John Refrigeration Technologies, and those are some fantastic people. You can also find me on Vero. You can find me on Trade Hounds. I think I said that already. You can find me on LinkedIn at Mike Mayberry, HVAC Reefer Guy, which is completely different content than anywhere else, because the 100% original content on LinkedIn. Where else am I at? You follow me around, don't you? I'm
Everywhere.
trying to think.
Everywhere.
I'm trying to think. And I just went on Reddit. We started Reddit Reddit this morning, so we're going to see how Reddit goes. See YouTube, LinkedIn. I got to look at my phone. It's all on my phone. But I'm everywhere that you guys didn't fit. Oh, and Tumblr and TikTok.
There you go.
You can find me on Tumblr, and TikTok is the newest. There's a bunch of music videos out there that you can watch. One of them just had 100,000 views. And Fluke, huge supporter from Fluke. I appreciate the guys at Fluke. And then work safe, be safe. Gosh, man, work safe, be safe. Be good humans. We all live on the planet. We all breathe the same air. We're all in it together. And just, be kind to each other.
Awesome. Love that. Also, if you haven't gotten your copy of Blue is the New White yet, please check it out on Amazon. Otherwise, you guys know where to find me, at Josh Zolan everywhere. LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all of that fun stuff, at Windy City Equipment on YouTube. But other than that, I appreciate all of you for listening. Thank you so much, as always. And Mike, thank you.
Absolutely. Anytime.